The tape which you are about to hear is from the Academy of Self-Awareness series, which represents an egalitarian community of individuals whose consecrated lives are devoted to the truth of being for the betterment of mankind as a whole. The title of this offering is Know That You Are Great and Declare Thyself Worthy of Divine Grace by Gordon Gardner. Humility is, know that you are great and dare to be so, while giving 100% credit to your source for that greatness, by the author. Of and by myself I can do nothing. The Father in me does the works, as stated by Jesus Christ. The only thing that I know for certain is that I know nothing. It's given to us by Socrates. Thou must love God as not God, not spirit, not person, but as he is, a sheer, pure, absolute one, sundered from all two-ness, and in whom we must eternally think, from nothingness to nothingness, by Meister Eckhart. Remain always independent of one another, and dependent solely upon your higher self, since it is your true authority on how to be. Realize that there is no need in all of that busyness, since there is nothing to prove, nor is there anyone to impress. You are complete and free to simply unfold from your perfect center, as long as you cease to hold opinions on the right and wrong of it all, inasmuch as creation is always and in all ways already faultless. Your very essence is undefiled love, pure wisdom, and perfect truth, while the nature of the earth, the mind of the universe, and the spirit of the cosmos is the incorruptible substance of your immortal being. You are a supreme being because of the fathomlessness of your sacred nature, the universality of your consecrated mind, and the limitlessness of your divine spirit. To know that you are great and to possess the temerity to be so is the intrinsic quality that is most essential for individual fulfillment, independent security, and unrestricted freedom. It is, however, absolutely necessary that you detach from the temporal world and do not try to fix it, and disconnect from the secular masses and do not try to free them. This will only be accomplished when you irrevocably sever the emotional, intellectual umbilical cord from people, places, and things, in the awareness that your only responsibility is to know thyself. Your solitary purpose for living a life on earth is to develop the ability to respond to your higher self, and therefore unite with the divine ground of your immortal being. As a free soul at liberty anywhere you happen to be, you must maintain a beginner's mind with nothing on it but peace, in the awareness that life is a perpetual here-now turning point, with each decisive moment filled with risk and opportunity. A mind that is conditioned with ideas, ideals, ideologies, etc., is a reactive mind, overflowing with the cherished opinions, which keeps its possessor a prisoner of space in bondage to time. The soul that you are is your higher self, and inner authority which can only direct you through a clear mind. In other words, reactive conditioned mind, with its determined intellect doing battle with its capricious emotions, is not clear, since it is clouded with the darkness of gross unreason. Since the mind is not the open channel it was meant to be, the light of pure reason is not allowed to preserve its natural flow from the self down to the lower physical self. An integral human being is a biological, ontological, feed-forward, feedback, cybernetics communication system, which, if the natural spiritual rhythm between the higher self and the lower self is preserved, is unquestionably infallible. The higher spiritual self is an ontological entity, whereas the lower natural self is a biological entity. And unless a free-flowing interconnectedness is preserved as the conscious awareness of the integral person, there shall be a painful identity crisis. Inasmuch as the energies are not flowing from the mental intuition down to the physical instincts, the natural spiritual integrity of the human soma, psyche, soul shall be blocked, thereby preventing the higher self from unfolding the lower self. This means limitation and ignorance will be the prevalent influence. The lower self, it was not a willing agent for the higher self, becomes the counterfeit ego self of personality, which does not have any reality of its own, since it is a mere fabrication of the normal emotional intellect in bondage to the 5 limited senses. Integral persons, in order to be integral persons, must verify their cognitive powers by way of the inherent genius of the higher spiritual self. Otherwise, disharmony, dissension, dissatisfaction, and disease shall be the fate of the restricted personalities who make up the reactive conditioned masses. The most necessary biological aspect of the individual's lower self is the 3 1/2 pound human sensorium, which is the complete nervous system and the whole brain. And the most essential attribute of the individual's higher self is the everywhere present consciousness of the cosmos, which contains the universal mind. The nature-mind-spirit integration requires that a brain-mind-cosmos interconnectedness be maintained as the ever-altering conscious awareness of an integral person. This is why the individual mind must be kept as an open channel to the indivisible mind of the cosmos, with the supreme human brain the most elaborate of computers ever devised and yet the most compact. The brain-mind-cosmos interconnectedness is a 3-in-1 unified life force field capable of limitless creative possibilities, which makes the human potential unlimited on an individual basis, although collectively restricted because of a lack of cooperativeness with the inner authority. Collective humanity receives its directions from the external authoritarianism of the church, state, science, medical, psychiatric dictates. This dependency has caused an emotional intellectual plague into effect amongst the masses who adhere to the mass mind sphere. Instead of individually aspiring for the inner directives of the universal mind in which we humans must live, move, and therefore preserve our individual being, the masses have turned their collective will over to the establishment, which tells them how they must live their lives. The masses are therefore witless puppets, while the establishment is the deceptive puppet master in the form of despotic churchianity, Machiavellian governments, arbitrary sciences, speculative medicine, and manipulative psychiatry. The out-of-order established order of the church, state, science, medical, psychiatric Big Five brotherhood has bedeviled the world and enslaved the masses ever since the individual abandoned his/her individuality and joined the collective of restricted personalities. The masses of restricted personalities are the malcontents who are forever demanding their human rights after having given up the solitary right of unrestricted individuality. The reestablishment of individuality requires the recognition that the solitary consciousness of the cosmos is inseparable and undifferentiated from the singular awareness of the individual. In other words, the individual I am awareness of an integral person is attuned to and at one with the indivisible I am consciousness of the whole cosmos. To fully realize the indivisibility of individuality is to come to the recognition of a brain-mind-cosmos interconnectedness within an individual body-mind-spirit. The body-mind-spirit of an integral human being is identical with the nature-mind-spirit of the living universe. This is known as the complete liberation and full illumination due to a total identification with the whole of creation. The consciousness of the cosmos is the solitary creator, everything created, and the singular creation, inasmuch as all three are in itself and all three are one. The one uncircumscribable consciousness appearing at the many centers of awareness form a creator-created creation. The one as the many is a single interrelated cosmic eventuality which never ceases to happen because it never began and therefore it will never end. And yet the only thing permanent about creation is the fact that it is constantly changing. An inevitable progression of natural unfoldment of creation is assured as long as the all-powerful principles of nature are allowed undisturbed development as the evolution of spirit. It is therefore most essential that mind be kept clear of mundane superficialities and mortal affectations. Otherwise, the natural earth shall continue to be tainted with the junk that goes under the name of technological progress. These fabrications of the frantic, rapine minds of technocrats who plunder the earth in the name of scientific progress has finally devolved into an arms race which could, if allowed, destroy the natural beauty of creation. Nature, of course, being the omnipotent aspect of the omnipresent Spirit, will intervene with a cataclysm of such gigantic proportion that all of the technological improvements, all of the technocrats, along with the rest of the establishment and its gullible adherents, shall be wiped off the face of the earth. This shall not be an act of an absentee Father God in a distant heaven, nor can the fallen devil in a not-so-distant hell be blamed for it. If it occurs at all, it will be simply nature clearing away the human debris in order to start fresh. The interconnectedness between the manifestations of infinite nature, the intricacies of universal mind, and the mysteries of eternal spirit must be fully realized, inasmuch as each one implies the other, in a perpetual reciprocation of complementary qualities. In other words, they are aspects of the solitary consciousness of holism, which, although abstract, is a three-in-one substance that constitutes the ground of every singular concrete form. This means that each mineral, plant, animal, and human form is an immanent point of awareness appearing as an individual representative of the transcendent, indivisible consciousness of the ordered universe. The transcendence of this still, dark, silent, immutable consciousness is also here and now the immanence of the movement, light, sound, and mutable awareness. And in this eternal moment is also emanating from, radiating in, and vibrating as the perpetual flux of each and every form, which are the particularizations of the Creator-created creation. Know that you are great, as a unique, distinct, and peerless cosmic individuation and supreme being, who is also an egalitarian with the awareness that no human being is inferior or superior to another. In the true cosmology of the living universe, there are no hierarchies, and each cosmic individuation is free from both the orthodox and the unorthodox. They are neither moral nor immoral, ethical or unethical, because they are not limited by mundane values and mortal standards. To follow the line of least resistance is the way of the middle path, upon which immortal pilgrims journey for a time and space. As cosmic individuations, they are not in conflict between the seeming right and wrong, good and evil, which plague the mortal minds of the restricted personalities who are prisoners of space and bondage to time. The consciousness of all cosmic individuations is all-encompassing, and even though they are pilgrims for a time and space, they abide at the apex of awareness, where space is boundless and time is interminable. The infinite, eternal, universal mind is the equable interface in which they live, move, and preserve their permanent identity, and throughout which the fathomlessness of their sacred nature is in perpetual interaction with the limitlessness of their divine spirit. Inasmuch as the infinite here intersects the eternal now, these pilgrims for a time and space are able to prevail over their environment, produce their reality, and preserve their individuality from an infinite, eternal spectrum of cosmic consciousness. By continuously elevating their viewpoint in the here now, their attitudes are improved and their feelings are refined, which makes it impossible to be fooled by the desire-time duality illusion believed in by the normal emotional intellect of restricted personalities. As unrestricted individualities, these pilgrims for a time and space see absolute reality as qualitative and heterogeneous, rather than viewing seeming reality as quantitative and homogeneous, which is the delusion of the five senses that keeps the restricted personalities as prisoners of space in bondage to time. There are no divisions of space in the infinite here, and there are no durations of time in the eternal now, which makes creation ultimately qualitative and not quantitative, like seeming reality appears to the five senses. Ultimate reality, as the thing in itself, is the infinite eternal noumenon, which is the mind that perceives, and the all-permeating ground of the boundless and terminable phenomenon, which is the whole of creation as mind perceives it. The noumenon is the ultimate reality which is underlying the vast phenomenon of existence, and is therefore the whole absolute consciousness of the cosmos. The center of the noumenon is everywhere, inasmuch as its circumference is non-existent. This everywhere present noumenon is full of an energy-matter plenum, which is an applicable etheric substance that is susceptible to being converted into productive manifestation by way of any creative person's optimistic thought, enthusiastic feeling, dynamic. It is therefore true that predestination begins with imagination, within the actuality of here in the reality of now, which gives unrestricted individualities dominion over their lives by way of control over their feeling thought dynamic. This means that it is within the power of each individual to transcend the mundane law of cause and effect, and to activate the here-now principle of create an affect, as she imagines it and likes it to be. In other words, integral persons have the aptitude to create their own here-now actuality in their own image and likeness, as a precise reflection of the feeling thought dynamic held in imagination. Integral persons, because they are answerable to their higher self only, are faultless in feeling, thought, and action. They are therefore able to uphold a carefree awareness of the here actuality and the now reality, as physically alert, mentally aware, and spiritually awake cosmic individuations. The higher spiritual self, by way of the creative principle intelligence power of the universal mind, directs the lower physical self through the accurate discernment of instinct, the precision awareness of intuition, and the authoritative perception of integrity. These, along with other universal mind powers, are infallible, which allows for the undefiled feelings, the consecrated thoughts, and the exemplary actions which only integral persons are free to express. This aptitude for divine expression is not for the restricted personalities who rely upon the ego self, but is for those unrestricted individualities alone who walk in wisdom. It is only when love is penetrated by truth that wisdom is conceived, as an ever-expanding path upon which pilgrims advance for a time and space. Without this enlightenment experience, the restricted personalities remain as prisoners of space in bondage of time, on their misery go-around called denial. Not to yield to the higher spiritual self is to enslave the lower physical self to the subjugation of the mass mind sphere, which keeps the restricted personalities who constitute the masses in bondage to the pleasure-pain syndrome. The ego self of personality is never certain, and is therefore always sorry, because it hasn't learned that short-term pleasure leads to long-term pain. Pain, however, has its benefits, since it is the negative force which tears away the many masks of personality in order to uncover the integral person, who is the lower physical self, who has ceased to argue with the inevitable will of the higher spiritual self. Upon the awakening of the up to now latent interior powers, the soul, the psyche, and the soma of a coordinated person are at last under the judicious inner authority of the higher spiritual self, while the lower physical self becomes fully acquiescent to these interior powers. With the creative death of the ego-fabricated, self-conscious personality, which never had any reality to begin with, the pilgrim simply steps onto the path of wisdom and walks right into heaven. The lower physical self of the integral person can now state, "I have uncovered the heaven within myself, and I have been elevated into the seventh dimension of being, where I dwell in peace, power, and plenty, at one with the permanent identity of my higher spiritual self." This is living at the apex of awareness known as immortality, with complete dominion over my eternal life. It is from this apex of awareness that you know that you are great, and dare to be so, while giving all of the credit to your higher spiritual self as the source of that greatness. The higher spiritual self is attuned to and at one with the greater cosmic self, and is in fact inseparable and undifferentiated from this solitary source consciousness. The higher spiritual self is a singular issue awareness which is emanating from, radiating in, and vibrating as the solitary source consciousness. This means that all integral persons are a source issue conscious awareness, wherein each is a cosmic individuation par excellence. Cosmic individuations are representatives and personifications of the otherwise impersonal cosmic self, which is the solitary source consciousness. Integral persons have elevated their awareness far beyond the egocentric self-consciousness of their restricted personalities. In this state of transcendental awareness, these pilgrims, for a time and space, have realized the geocentric cosmic consciousness of celestial beings, and as unrestricted individualities, they are able to perceive reality from an infinite eternal scale of observation. The profound simplicity of this state of being is due to the fact that their mind is centered where and when the infinite here intersects the eternal now, wherein the universal mind is the equable interface throughout which their human nature and their human spirit continuously interacts. A state of at-one-ment between the divine source and the sacred issue, as the conscious awareness of yet another integral person has transpired. Integral persons no longer have a fake ego to be centered upon, a false self to be conscious of, nor a counterfeit personality to be an identity crisis over. This, of course, is the ultimate in liberation for a free soul at liberty on earth, who is an immortal pilgrim for time and space. The liberation of illumination through identification with the solitary source consciousness requires that the singular issue awareness be free from all selfish desires, all psychological dependency upon chronological time, and all academic attachments to the conceptualized dualities of the normal emotional intellect. An integral person must be free from all this and more before the natural spiritual integrity can free the soul from the limitation and ignorance of the ego-fabricated self-conscious personality. Then, and then only, will the awareness of the person become conscious of the greater realities. It is up to each individual human being to know that you are great and declare thyself worthy of divine grace, and then relax into the journey as a pilgrim for time and space. I thank you very much.